Welcome to the Physical Product Movement, a podcast by Fiddle. We share stories of the world's most ambitious and exciting physical product brands to help you capitalize on the monumental change in how, why, and where consumers buy. I'm your host, Ken Ojuka. In this episode, I talked to Pelle Jørgensen, CEO and founder of Vera Mexicana, a Mexican food brand focused on bringing the experience of Mexican cuisine to you. We talk about their passion for a socially responsible and transparent food supply chain, the importance of choosing the right ingredient suppliers and building a genuine partnership with them, and how they use the depth and richness of Mexican culture to build an interesting and authentic brand. Pelle was an amazing guest, and I think you'll learn a lot from this interview. Hi, Pelle. Welcome to the Physical Product Movement podcast. Thanks for joining me. I was going to ask about your background. Looks like it was consulting and some finance, maybe some analytics, correct me if I'm wrong. And then you're from Denmark, but now you're living in San Diego and you're running a food company. How did that all come about?
So I wanted to do something else, and I've always loved food. A lot. And of course, that not necessarily doesn't mean that you're qualified to be, a chef or anything like that. But it's always been something that's been very dear to my heart. And, I had the amazing opportunity to go to Mexico, and it was just on vacation. And what I saw there was a truly rich and complex, full of history, culture of food, in a way that I didn't know personally. And, coming from Europe, of course, we have a lot of fine cuisine from Italian to French or Spanish. And we have all these rich, complex stories around them. And everyone knows them and everyone can relate to them. And then walking around in, these small pueblos in Mexico, you just see that it's almost like being in Italy. They have these amazing raw ingredients. They spend hours upon hours, even days sometimes, to cook fantastic sauce or mole, or make a fresh salsa every morning, or, making their own tortillas, whatever it is. And I feel like there's so many people that didn't know about this. And I certainly didn't. So, the combination of finding this kind of very unique flavor profile and food culture that I felt the world needed to know about. And then also seeing a need in the local communities. When I did have the opportunity to visit and of course spent a lot of time since then in Mexico, what I've seen is it's been kind of difficult to deal with, because it is, and of course not difficult for me, but for those that I meet with, for example, you go out and you visit farmers, and they'll tell you the same story over and over again. I had this big deal with insert American company or insert European company to buy my harvest. And they made an agreement, and now I'm going to, I'll do it. And 9 months from now, they're going to buy it. And then comes the actual harvest, and the company comes and says, we'll pay you 20% less than we've agreed to. And a couple of things happened.
I've heard these stories, and just agreeing with you, as somebody who's traveled to both Italy and Mexico, I've also experienced, I think, some of what you're talking about, and so anyway, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's all right. I can become a little bit impassioned when I'm talking about this.
No, I love it. That's why we have you on. Let's hear it.
Well, anyway, you're there and you're seeing this, again and again and again. And what happens is the fallout for the company is, of course, either they get the product or they don't. They can probably buy it somewhere else if they don't get it at the price they want. But the farmer may have taken a loan to actually be able to invest in seeds, maybe expand their, the amount of farmland they have. Maybe they hired hands to help them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're in a situation, even if they sell products because their margins are razor thin, well, they can't actually make a living with it. So maybe they have more loans afterwards than they had before. Oftentimes, either way, it ends up with the farmer being destitute or not having improved their lot after a year or 2 years, however many years it is.
Right, right. And not to mention, it's just call it unethical or dishonest, but the farmers are the ones that suffer.
Exactly, and we actually also want to kind of point out. So the next link in the supply chain often is a local producer or factory, and
Right.
oftentimes people have this idea that they are the big guys. But in our case, at least, we're working with these also small producers. And a lot of things that happen to the farmers happen to them as well, just in different ways. So one of the suppliers we worked with, very successful around a decade ago, in his local community, was selling well. Walmart in Mexico kind of reached out to him and he started selling to them. But what happened was they didn't pay him. So they would wait more than 6 months to pay him because they had all the power in that relationship.
Right.
So even though his products were selling, he couldn't get enough cash to actually make things work. And what happened was that he went bankrupt. He had to start all over. That's his story. But from Walmart's perspective, in order to improve their own cash flow, they push that down the supply chain.
Understood. It's interesting. You see that even in the States. You see that where a manufacturer or a supplier is often delayed in their payment or sometimes just not paid. And they end up in these difficult situations as well. And these are people here in the United States who have a little bit more, to say power in the relationship. But a small producer in rural Mexico, it just seems like they wouldn't have very much power at all in that relationship. So it's not that surprising. It's very sad, and I hate to hear that it happens. But anyway, I want to know kind of, okay, so you saw this happening. I imagine, it made you pretty angry and impassioned you in some way. So what are you guys doing to address this or to help out with any of these problems?
Well, so we've kind of attacked it from a couple of different angles. We're working selectively only with small producers and medium-sized producers right now. And of course, as we scale, that'll have to change. So we're kind of thinking a lot about, okay, how do we make sure that we bring all those small producers with us on our journey? And so the first kind of initiative we have is, it's always been about sort of like an educational relationship. They educate us on the products and the raw ingredients and how wonderful the culture is and the history and new recipes that we can make. And we help them, think about business, think about the regulatory side of it, think about, what do I need to do to take the next step? And this takes a lot of investment from us. We spend much more time with our suppliers than normal comparable companies do. But the idea is that we want to help them. So for example, with one of our suppliers, he was having trouble figuring out his own books, his finances. Was he making products on the products? Was he making profits on the products he was selling?
Okay.
And he trusted us enough to just share everything. And we created kind of a new system for him and helped him figure out, what do I actually make? What are my inputs? What are my outputs? And what is everything in between?
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Well, it's at least something that we take very seriously, and it's not something you can really put a number to. It's more time and investment in relationships.
Right. I think a lot of people, don't necessarily consider their suppliers as what they really are. It's a partnership. And so, your success is tied to their success. And I think that's a very, it's just a very good way of doing business. And so let's talk a little bit about how that translates into a difference in your company or in your products. What do you think, this holistic view of that relationship with your supplier, what does that actually do to, maybe your quality or how does that affect your business?
Well, I think it does a whole number of things for us and for them. One is and I'm just going to be honest, it makes us happy with what we're doing, which I think many people take for granted.
No, it's not. It's not a small thing. It really isn't. I think too many people take that for granted.
And that's very important for us, that everyone who works for us feels that, this is a part of it. If we're talking more about the products, it has meant that we've had access to some products that don't exist right now in the market, especially in Northern Europe, but also when we do launch in the US, the products that we have are made by people who have maybe made them for 50 years. Maybe they've had a farm for 100 years. Each product type is unique in that we're working with some people who would almost assuredly not be able to access international markets. And that, of course, gives us, a wonderful product, and we're really happy to show it. But it also gives us the opportunity to kind of put them at the forefront. This brand is not about us. It's not about me, who's a Dane. I don't want to appropriate in any way Mexican culture. I want to show it, and I want other people to experience it as I have had the opportunity to experience it. And by working so closely with these people and showing the importance of these relationships, we really have experienced tremendous growth in our suppliers in only a couple of years. And I can't wait to see what will happen in the next 5 years.
Yeah, me too.
And seeing that in our new product development, for example, when we say, people in X market, they're really looking for something a little bit different, but we want to stay true to kind of your story. They are the ones who are helping us develop new recipes. So it's a very, very deeply integrated partnership. Whereas I think many companies in the modern day kind of like CPG market make a recipe, go to a co-packer, sell product. And for us, it takes a lot more time, takes a lot more effort, but we believe that the product that comes out and the story we're able to tell and the people we're able to help along the way makes it all worth it. Right.
I think it adds a richness and sort of an authenticity to your brand and to your story and to your products. So let's go back in time a little bit. All right. So you have this idea that you want to launch, was it hot sauce? Was that the first product that you launched?
Yeah, we launched with hot sauces and fruit sauces.
Yeah. So you have this idea. What was your path like? What were the first things that you did?
That's a really good question. We were sitting back in Denmark after having both traveled to Mexico in different sort of like during different trips, and I had brought back, and this was even before we started the company. I had brought back, I don't know, 15 different sauces, hot sauces, cooking sauces, everything, just because I love this kind of stuff. And I was just looking at all this and said, if we could just bring these products right here to Denmark, we would have a business. So what we did was we looked at these labels that we had bought on the market, and sometimes there was no email, sometimes there was a number, and we just started Googling. And then we found all the people for the hot sauces we had. And, we made a list of, I don't know how many people it was, let's say 50. And then we went to Mexico and we visited a whole bunch. And it was, that first trip was the craziest experience I've ever had, in that it was so rich with experiences, but also that, some genuinely insane things happened. So, for example, we met some folks who were making sauces. We don't work with them now. I'll keep their name out of it. But they invited us to kind of go look at some farms with them. And we're like, sure, let's do it. And we got in their car, and it was this one guy. Let's call him Alejandro for purposes of this call. And Alejandro had just bought a new car, and he was very excited about it. And when we drove through the mountains, I have never in my entire life driven 100 miles per hour on small mountain roads.
Oh, geez.
But we certainly did there. And And, would I get into his car again? Absolutely not. But when you're working in places where the culture is significantly different than what you're used to, one of the things you have to be willing to is kind of like take a leap of faith. And most of the times, it's amazing what comes back, right? We've had home cooked meals that have been amazing made by people who just wanted to show what they could do. And then, on the other side, you have experiences like this where it's a little bit different.
Where you're fearing for your life a little bit, huh?
Exactly.
Okay, and so compare your product the way it is now to when you initially launched your first version. Are there any significant differences, or are there any changes that you had to make along the way?
For some of the flavors, we've had to, which I guess one could anticipate, but we've had to make them a little bit milder for the Northern European market.
I see. Mm-hmm. So it's funny because I have a 12-year-old son who loves any kind of sauce. He's always interested. He's definitely a sauce guy. He's always interested in trying the latest sauce, and he particularly likes really hot sauces. And so let's just say there are some things that he is happy with that me or my wife can't handle. It's just not enjoyable. So imagine. So it was a little too hot. You needed to make it a little more mild.
Yes, and it's actually kind of funny because we don't really have super hot sauces by American standards.
Oh, okay.
This is actually something a lot of folks kind of often misunderstand about Mexican cuisine is they think of super hot and very spicy, lots of chili. But one of the things that we want to showcase is the incredible diversity of chilies, for example. So if you look at, Mexican cuisine, Northern Mexican is significantly spicier than Southern Mexican. And I'm not saying that Southern Mexican doesn't use a lot of chilies. They certainly do. And they certainly also have spicy food. But what across Mexico you see is a use of chilies in a way that we don't use them elsewhere. And, chilies kind of originated down in Bolivia, 15,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, whatever the number is, as a chili called like a chiltepin, kind of is the modern version of a wild ancient chili. And since then, they've been, cultivated everywhere in the world. And, they're called different things, but they all originated there. And now we have, around, 5 major species or major kind of categories of chilies. And in Mexico alone, you have hundreds. And as opposed to many other places in the world, they use all of them. So, people in the US maybe know a guajillo or an ancho. But then you have, cascabel, you have arbol, you have pasilla mije, a whole plethora. And of course, I'm just mentioning some of the few that they have.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And what they do with the chilies is a lot of these chilies don't have a lot of capsaicin in them. Capsaicin being the spicy ingredient, if you will. And so they'll make sauces that you think are spicy, but are actually much more about the incredible umami of the chili or the depth and flavor of, let's say, the wood or the smoke that you're going to get from it, or the earthiness from other chilies. Or, if you look at an ancho or a pasilla, you have this sweetness, kind of like almost like a fig or kind of like these different fruits that we think of, because fundamentally chilies are fruits.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. I just did a chocolate tasting, and so you're kind of reminding me of the guy describing all the different chocolates and just the wide variety of tastes that come from the same cacao plant, but it just they can be processed in different ways depending on where the fruit is grown. It can affect the flavor profile. I just didn't ever really think about that with chilies, but it seems like there's very much the same type of thing going on there.
Absolutely. And we're not only about chilies. We have a fairly wide portfolio of what we would call high quality Mexican ingredients. So we work with an organic cacao farmer who has amazing criollo rubio, which is criollo rubio is a bean type that comes from only that part of Mexico. And they have their hacienda has been around for around 150 years with the same family there. And, take a turn to a different way. And we also work with Mexican vanilla. And, again, one of the things that very few people think about when they think Mexico is vanilla, because, I don't know if you're aware, but vanilla originated in Mexico.
No, I didn't know that. Huh.
In the region of Veracruz, the kind of the ancient Aztecs were the first to cultivate vanilla, and they, were using it for drinks, especially back then. And when I say cultivate, I mean go out in the wild and pick vanilla, not necessarily actually be what do you call it, pollinating it like we do now.
Right.
What happened was, back in the when the French came and the Spanish, they started exporting vanilla, and the French brought it all the way down to French Polynesia and Madagascar. And now, of course, people think vanilla, they think Madagascar. But the vanilla orchid is in fact from Mexico.
Yeah, interesting. So let's switch gears a little bit. I wanted to ask you about why focus on the Danish market, and you already mentioned that there's not a ton of competition. Was that the primary reason, or what was your thinking behind focusing on the Danish market?
Well, being from there, there's been this incredible journey in my lifetime in Danish chefs and cooks and restaurants and the culinary scene in Denmark. When I was a kid, the food that people ate was a big roast, boiled potatoes, and some greens on the side. That's it. And I'm not that old.
I have to be honest. That sounds pretty good, though. I'm sure it's pretty good, but maybe a little variety would be nice, huh?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's delicious, and Danish food, classic Danish food, traditional Danish food is amazing. But what's happened, over the past 20 years with Noma and basically the whole family around Noma, of all the chefs that's been there and have now created, Michelin restaurants around the world. Denmark has seen an incredible development in its food and culinary scene. And in the last, let's say, 10 years or so, Mexican food has really started showing up in restaurants. In the last 5 years, we've seen an incredible development where we had maybe a couple of restaurants, Mexican restaurants in Copenhagen, the capital of Denmark. Now we have dozens. And so we saw this opportunity where it hit the restaurants first, and we believe it's going to go into the supermarkets and create kind of this new category. It already exists as Tex-Mex, but there is no real Mexican category. And that's what we hope to kind of bring there.
Okay, I see. And how much is your business is retail versus online?
Most of it is retail right now. We have focused so again, Denmark being quite a different market. We're both in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway now. And in those regions, we're focusing on retail because that's where we believe we can have the biggest impact, kind of like educationally get people to see it, show recipes. And we're trying to create, of course, a full universe for people to enter into. With our website, we have a lot of stories about how we work with the people we work with and the recipes that people can make with our products, et cetera, et cetera. While I think in the US, we're going to have a different model, as it is quite a much more mature market in the Mexican category, and we'll focus a lot more on D2C over here, as opposed to in Denmark, where it's kind of you have to educate the user about and the customer about, okay, what is it I actually have here.
Understood. And how did you, once you had your initial product, how did you think about getting into some of these supermarkets that you were able to get distribution in?
Well, we've always been very focused on finding the correct partners to work with. So we had a pretty clear target from day one of working with the chain that we're currently working with. They're a small, high-end chain that allows us the flexibility to kind of show our products in the way that we think that they need to be shown in order to really get Mexican culture in there. And then once we have tried and kind of tested our model, the plan is, of course, to kind of like expand a little bit more. But it is with this idea that we want always to stay true to the products and to the local communities in Mexico that are making the products.
So what do you mean by that they allow you to show your products in that way? Is there anything specific that they were doing for you guys?
So the ones we work with, they've been working with a lot of smaller startups in Denmark with the idea of working in a more socially sustainable way. So, everyone pays their suppliers better. They work with us as a small supplier on making sure that we can live up to regulatory requirements, etc. So in that sense, it kind of meshed completely with how we wanted to do business. And that has, borne out really well, because now that when we introduce products, they're a partner for us, and they want to see, okay, which way can we take it? And it also allows us to work with them on, marketing materials and campaigns the right way in order to, target the people we want to target and also tell them the story we want to tell them.
Okay, great. And I think a theme that's kind of coming out on this conversation is pick the right partners and to treat each other well. So that sounds great. You've mentioned a couple times that you're considering a U.S. launch. Is that already? Do you have that on the schedule? What's your timeline for that?
I'm very happy you asked. I probably have forgotten to talk about it myself. Yes, we are actually bringing up the product as we speak, and hope to have it next week in California. And the idea is from there to start selling, direct to consumers, test out the products a little bit more. Since, we've primarily gone into Europe, and as I said, the markets are quite different. We anticipate maybe having to make some changes to sizing, or to kind of slight flavor profile changes.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you about different challenges that you may have had, and just maybe considering this from the view of somebody who's considering getting into the world of launching a physical product, and particularly a food brand. Do you have any advice that you could offer to somebody that's considering that, or maybe an example of a mistake that you made that could help them to avoid that mistake?
We've made so many mistakes over the past 2.5 years that it would have to be a very long meeting for me to go through them all. No, in truth, what I mean by that is it's a little bit of a joke, of course, because the fact of the matter is that if you do this right and you're dealing with as much complexity as we are as a relatively small, but we have 30 SKUs, all with kind of we have labels for the US, labels for Europe. What I've found is that the complexity of dealing with the CPG market is what is most difficult. And by complexity of the CPG market, I mean both on the demand and the supply side. So, supermarkets have very high requirements to punctuality, the way you package things, how it looks when it gets there, the quality of the product, of course. And that means that, small mistakes can have incredibly large outsized impact on your business. At the same time, on the supply side, especially for us with a relatively long, let's say 3 months, 2.5 months from we order a product to we kind of have it in our hands in our warehouse, it can have a really large impact on you if your production run is wrong, you label incorrectly, and anything really in between. Let's say that the cases have the wrong barcodes on them. And I guess if someone is, sitting here and listening to this and thinking, oh, I want to start my own food company. Well, my first tip is just do it and don't look back and be comfortable with making mistakes. because you're going to make them.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Um, well, I wanted to maybe broaden this a little bit. Your parent company is Get Good Taste, and you obviously have multiple brands. How do you, think about this? How do you split your time and your focus? I'm sure you get pulled in many different directions.
Yeah, no, that's I chuckle because time management is most definitely the most important part of my day. Um, we right now have two of our own brands, so that we've developed ourselves, and then we also carry a couple of other brands in Denmark for other Mexican companies, notably some mezcal companies. And on top of that, we we import sort of like a variety of Mexican, what I call basic goods. So let's say canned goods you need, tomatillos, beans, etc. And so we have actually quite a broad business right now, and working with both the wholesale market in Denmark, the D2C market, and the retail market. And managing all this means that it puts tremendous amount of pressure on me as the CEO of the company, but also on the entire management team in order to kind of like focus our attention. And the way we've decided to at least approach this strategic issue is working with our own little board. We have brought in someone from the outside from the beginning. Her name is Yosha Gargeya. She's a partner in a sort of high-level strategy consulting company. And she helps us, focus our attention. What are the strategic targets and how should we be spending our time? Those are two of the most important questions that we ask of her. And we expect her to kind of help us navigate this difficult path.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you've got quite a few brands, quite a few SKUs. Are there any that you're particularly excited about? Maybe more than the others, but maybe something new that's on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been working on figuring out the correct tortilla. And what do I mean when I say the correct tortilla? I mean a high quality tortilla that is preferably organic. And we're hoping to, approach this in 2021 to find a good solution. And I know you didn't ask me this in particular, but the complexities are, do you want to go fresh or do you want preservatives? Preservatives, of course, what supermarkets want. But in the US, you have such a vast variety of tortillas in the market that you do not in Denmark. So we want to kind of innovate in that space. And that's something we're quite excited about.
Oh, pretty cool. Well, let's maybe switch gears. I've got quick fire round here as we get ready to close up. I've got 5 quick questions for you. Just tell me just a fast answer, and we'll just go from there. You ready?
Okay.
All right. What's one tool or resource that you rely on to run your business?
Let's say it is for sure project management tools. So we use Trello.
Trello, yeah, that's a very popular one in this space. What is one book that has helped you in your product journey?
I actually have it right next to me. It's Peppers of the Americas by Maricel y Priscilla. And it is an amazing book that basically tells the story of where peppers came from and why they are what they are now.
That's awesome. I can't say we've ever heard that answer before. Peppers of America. That's awesome. What is one piece of advice that you'd give to your 21-year-old self?
Don't be afraid to just go out and do something. And I know that many entrepreneurs say this, but I just can't stress it enough. If you have it in you, just go out and start something.
Awesome.
It's going to be more fun than anything you can do.
Yep. And kind of stress the importance of learning on the job, right? A lot of this you can't anticipate. You just learn it as you come across it. That's great advice. Who is one person in the world that you would love to take to lunch?
Oh, what an excellent question. I've always been incredibly fascinated by politics also as an aside. And right now, given our current times, I would just die to take Donald Trump to lunch. and hear what the hell he has been thinking the last 4 years.
That would be a very interesting lunch.
I mean, yeah, but we don't have to go any deeper.
Sure. And what's your situation? Are you single, married, kids?
I am married to my wife, Allison.
Okay, awesome. All right, as we wrap up here, you've already given a little bit of advice, but is there, any parting words of advice that you'd give to people who are grinding it out in the world of physical products?
Not so much, I guess, like a specific set of advice, but I tend to tell people just to have endurance and have faith in yourself. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And, if you do things right, treat people well, you have respect for people you work with, it'll work out in the end.
Okay, that's great. And is there anything that you want to promote or plug?
I would just love for people to explore more about Vera Mexicana, and you can do that at our website, veramexicana.com. And, in particular, I hope we can help people learn a little bit about all the culture of Mexico and what they have to offer.
Okay, great. And we'll include that link in the show notes. And if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
That's just Pelle, my first name, Pelle, at getgoodtaste.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, look, Pelle, it's been good talking to you, and I appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast with us. It's been an awesome interview, and I think a lot of people are going to get value out of this. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. It's my pleasure. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, Ken.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
The Physical Product Movement podcast is brought to you by Fiddle. To find out more about Fiddle and how our industry-leading inventory ops platform is giving modern brands and manufacturers full visibility into their inventory and operations, visit fiddle.io. And then make sure to search for Physical Product Movement in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Fiddle, thanks for listening.